Okay, so you want to speak English more confidently, right? We got this super interesting episode from the Interfusion podcast all about that.
Yeah, it's cool. They're self-improvement podcasts, but this one is specifically for, like, English learners. All levels, too. So, no matter where you are, there's something in there for you.
And you were saying you wanted, like, practical stuff, tips and tricks you can actually use.
Yeah.
To, actually boost your confidence when speaking.
Exactly. And what's really neat is, like, the way they structured the episode, it starts with why we all struggle with confidence, and then, bam, right into the actionable advice.
So let's break it down. Like, they start off by asking if you've ever felt, nervous or frustrated trying to speak English. I mean, I know I have. Have you?
Oh, yeah, totally. And the episode says it's, like, incredibly common. Happens to almost everyone learning English at some point.
But why, though? What makes it so nerve-wracking to speak English?
Well, they highlight a few things. One biggie is, like, the fear of messing up. Grammar, pronunciation, that kind of stuff. So worried about sounding wrong that you just freeze up.
Oof, yeah. I've been there. Like, you overthink every single word, and then nothing comes out right.
Then they're just not practicing enough. If you don't speak regularly, of course, you're going to feel kind of rusty,
Yeah.
Hesitant.
That's true. It's like anything, really. You got to keep those muscles working.
And then, of course, there's, like, the fear of being judged, people thinking you're not smart if you make mistakes.
Oh, yeah, that one's a big one. Like, almost stage fright, even if it's just a casual conversation.
Right. But here's the good news. They actually give some really good advice for getting over those fears. It's not about being perfect overnight. It's about building habits that help you feel more comfortable, more confident over time.
Okay, I'm interested. So what's the first step?
Well, they call it a mindset shift. Sounds kind of fluffy, but it's actually really powerful.
All right, let's hear it. How do you shift your mindset to be better at speaking English?
One of the biggest things they talk about is embracing your mistakes. Like, instead of seeing them as failures, they're proof you're learning. Even native speakers mess up, so it's not about being perfect.
So it's more about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. They actually quote a study in the episode where, get this, people who viewed mistakes as opportunities learned new languages twice as fast. They even compare it to, like, learning to ride a bike. You're going to fall a few times before you get it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Maybe.
So instead of beating myself up for every grammar error, I should see it as a stepping stone.
Yeah. They say if you think of English as a tool, not just a subject to study, it makes a huge difference. Less pressure, more enjoyment.
I like that. It's about connecting with people, not getting every grammar rule perfect. But how do you actually day that? Like, get over that fear of speaking up?
That's where the practical stuff comes in. They give a whole bunch of things you can actually do to build confidence, even if you're starting from, like, zero.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the first habit they suggest?
One of the simplest ones, but it's surprisingly effective, is talking to yourself. In English, of course.
Wait, really? Like, just having conversations with myself?
Yep. Might feel weird at first, but it helps you get comfortable forming sentences, using vocab, without any pressure. Describe what you're doing, think out loud, even have, like, pretend conversations.
Interesting. So it's like giving myself a private English lesson where I'm the teacher, Edie the student.
Exactly. And if talking out loud is too strange, they suggest using a voice recorder. Read an article, talk about your day, whatever, then listen back. You'll hear what you need to work on, no judgment.
That's a good idea. I do that sometimes when I'm practicing for presentations, and it's amazing what you notice when you hear yourself objectively.
Right. Gives you that outside perspective. Another tip they have is practicing in front of a mirror.
Okay, that one does sound a little awkward.
I know, but it helps you get used to actually seeing yourself speak English, which can make you feel more confident. You can also check out your, like, facial expressions, body language, that kind of stuff.
So it's like a dress rehearsal, but for conversations.
Exactly. And then there's this technique called shadowing, which is really cool. Have you heard of it?
I think so, but I'm not sure what it actually is.
So basically, you listen to a native speaker, like a podcast or a video, and you try to repeat what they're saying almost at the same time.
Oh, so you're like their shadow speaking along with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It might be a little intense at first, but it's awesome for fluency and pronunciation. You're literally mimicking how they sound.
That makes sense. Training your brain to speak more naturally.
And speaking of sounding natural, they talk about vocabulary too, but in a way that's actually manageable. Like, we've all had those awful experiences with, like, memorizing huge word lists.
Ugh, don't even get me started on vocabulary lists. Worst part of language class.
Right. But Interfusion has a different approach. They're all about learning phrases, chunks of language, not just individual words.
What do you mean by that?
So, like, instead of just memorizing happy, you learn, I'm happy to see you. Or instead of interesting, it's, that sounds interesting.
Ah, okay. Learning these ready-made building blocks for conversation.
Exactly. Makes it way easier to actually use the words. And they suggest making English a part of your daily life, like, changing your phone settings to English, writing your to-do list in English, even thinking in English.
So basically, immersing yourself in the language even when you're not studying.
Yes, and one of their biggest recommendations is just listening to as much English as you can. Podcasts, movies, shows, audiobooks. The more you hear, the more you absorb,
Like training your ear to understand different accents and ways of speaking.
Exactly. They really emphasize that listening is just as important as speaking when it comes to confidence. But of course, you got to actually speak to other people at some point, and that's where a lot of people get nervous.
Yeah, I can see that. Practicing alone is one thing, but speaking in real time is like a whole other ballgame. So what do they say about finding people to practice with?
They have a bunch of suggestions depending on your comfort level and your goals. One popular one is finding a language exchange partner. There are websites and apps where you can connect with native English speakers who are learning your language.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. It's like a language swap, right?
Exactly. You help each other out. It's a great way to make new friends and learn about other cultures. They also recommend joining online English groups.
Like those Facebook groups where everyone's chatting in English?
Yep. Tons of them out there for all levels and interests, so you can chat about stuff you actually care about.
That's got to be less intimidating than trying to talk to a stranger at a coffee shop.
For sure. And if you prefer something more structured, they recommend taking an online English class.
That's good if you like having a teacher and getting feedback.
And they even suggest starting a speaking challenge with friends. Commit to speaking English for a certain amount of time each day or week.
Ooh, a little friendly competition.
Yeah.
I like it. Could make practicing a lot more fun.
Now, all that's great, but what if someone is still nervous? Even after all that practice and finding people to talk to?
Yeah, it's one thing to know these tips. It's another to actually use them when you're in the moment feeling all those nerves.
Yeah.
What do they say about handling that anxiety?
They've got some good stuff for that, too. One thing they say is to prepare some common responses beforehand.
Like having a script for those moments when you're most likely to freeze up.
Exactly. If you know you're going to a networking event, for example, practice introducing yourself, talking about your work, that kind of thing.
Take some of the pressure off because you're not trying to come up with stuff on the spot.
And they also talk about using body language to your advantage. Standing tall, eye contact, gestures. It all helps you look and feel more confident.
I've heard about that. Your posture can actually affect your mood.
Right. And they're big on taking deep breaths, especially if you're getting flustered. Sounds simple, but it really works.
Like a reset button for your anxiety.
Yeah. And they have this fun suggestion for those pre-speech jitters, power poses. Ever heard of them?
Yeah, but I'm not sure what they actually are.
It's basically standing in a way that makes you feel powerful. Feet apart, shoulders back, hands on your hips, that kind of thing.
So you're physically showing confidence.
Exactly. And they say even doing that for a minute or two before speaking can actually make you feel more confident, more in control, like you're tricking your brain.
That's wild. So even if you're nervous inside, you can use your body to project confidence.
Exactly. And they give tips on what to do if you get stuck or forget a word. It's totally fine to pause instead of saying or all the time.
Ooh, yeah. I definitely use those filler words too much when I'm nervous.
They also say to use simpler language if you're overwhelmed. Better to be clear than to try to use big words and get flustered.
It's about getting your message across, not showing off your vocabulary.
Yes. And remember, pronunciation matters for clarity, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
That's a relief.
Ugh.
I still struggle with some sounds, and I worry people won't understand me.
But they emphasize that it's more about clarity than accent. They suggest breaking words into syllables to practice, using online tools to hear how native speakers pronounce things.
Good idea. I use those online dictionaries with audio sometimes.
And of course, they're all about mimicking native speakers you like. Pay attention to their intonation, their rhythm, how they stress certain words.
It's like learning by ear, which is how we learned our first language.
Exactly. And one last tip, they talk about tracking your progress and celebrating your wins along the way.
That's so important. It's easy to get discouraged, so remembering how far you've come is key.
They suggest keeping an English journal to track your progress and, just reflect on your experiences. They also say to record yourself speaking English every month or so to hear how much you've improved.
Those are really good ideas. It's like having actual proof of your progress.
And most importantly, celebrate even the small wins. Every new word, every conversation, every mistake you learn from, it all adds up.
I love that. Focusing on the positive and appreciating every step forward.
So there you have it. A whole bunch of practical stuff for building confidence in speaking English.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired after all those tips from Inner Fusion.
Me too. It's amazing how many little things you can do to, boost your confidence, huh?
Yeah, for sure. But I bet some people listening might be feeling a little overwhelmed,
Yeah.
We covered a lot. Where do you even start with all this?
That's true. It is a lot. It's important to remember, though, that you don't got to do everything at once, right?
So, don't try to change your whole English routine overnight.
Exactly. They really emphasize starting small and, building momentum. Pick one or two things that really click for you and make those a habit. Then once you're comfortable, add something else. It's like any new skill, consistency is key.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's about habits, not burning yourself out.
Right. And the good news is there are so many resources out there to help you.
Okay, let's get into the resources. What are some of your go-tos for finding speaking partners or online communities?
Well, for language exchange partners, some popular apps are Tandem, HelloTalk, Speaky. Those are good ones. They make it really easy to find native English speakers who want to learn your language.
Oh, cool. Like a global network of language buddies.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're more into the online groups, Facebook, Reddit, Discord, they all have tons of English learning communities.
So you can find people to chat about anything, not just boring textbook stuff.
Totally. And there are groups for every level, so you can find one that feels, comfortable for you.
Now, what if someone wants something a little more structured? Any online courses you recommend?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Duolingo, Babbel, Rosetta Stone, those are popular ones for getting the basics down.
Those are good for beginners, or if you just need a refresh.
And if you want something more personalized, there's italki and Verbling. They connect you with actual English tutors for one-on-one lessons.
Ooh, like a personal English coach.
But learning doesn't have to be all about apps and courses, right?
True. What are some fun ways to practice?
Inner Fusion is big on using entertainment. They say watch movies and TV shows in English.
With subtitles, of course.
Of course. It's a great way to immerse yourself, pick up new words, but it doesn't feel like studying.
Passive learning. Sneaky.
And don't forget about podcasts and audiobooks. So many options, you're bound to find something you'll actually enjoy.
I'm a big podcast person myself.
Yeah.
It's like having a conversation with interesting people, even if you're just listening.
And if you like music, karaoke is surprisingly good for pronunciation and fluency.
Okay, that one I gotta try.
And don't underestimate real-life conversations.
Yeah.
If you can, go to English language events, meetups, workshops, whatever. Practice in a real setting.
Yeah, get out there and push yourself a little.
Oh, and one more resource. We talked about it earlier, journaling.
I was hoping you'd bring that up. I love journaling.
It's such a powerful tool, not just for English, but for, everything. Inner Fusion says, keep an English journal to track your progress, try new words, just write whatever's on your mind.
It's like talking to yourself, but on paper.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to get creative, Write stories, poems, songs, whatever gets you writing.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. I feel like we've gone over everything. Mindset, pronunciation, finding the right resources. It's all been great.
It's been fun, but the most important thing is actually doing something with all this, right? Don't just let it sit in your head. Put it into action.
Yes. Pick one thing. Start today. Even if it's just 5 minutes of talking to yourself in English, it's a step in the right direction.
And remember what they said. Celebrate all the wins along the way. Every word, every conversation, every mistake you learn from, it all gets you closer to your goal.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, everyone, that's it for our deep dive. We hope you're feeling ready to get out there and speak English with confidence.
You got this.